Okay, welcome to the November meeting of the Bronxville Planning Board. Appreciate everyone coming out tonight. We'll start as usual with the minutes of our prior meeting. We didn't have an October meeting, but we had a September meeting of the board, and we have minutes from that meeting. Any corrections? If not, if someone would like to move the minutes.
I'll second to move the minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we're in business. We only have one item in front of us tonight, and before we start the proceedings, I should point out that apparently our projector is broken. So sorry about that. I know that makes it a little more complicated for the applicant, but we do all have your materials, and we'll do our best to follow along, and I think you've provided us with a lot to go with. So we have the Bronxville Playroom that's been proposed for 108 Pondfield Road. So if someone speaking for the applicant can come up to the mic and identify yourself, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I am the applicant. My name is Liz Fitzgerald. I'm the founder and owner of the Bronxville Playroom. I'm here tonight to formally request a change of use at 108 Pondfield from retail to a recreation facility, indoor recreation. This space has long been occupied by a frame and photo store, and we're proposing to turn it into a children's play space. I think, as you've seen in my application, the vision for the Bronxville Playroom is to be a place for young toddlers and their caregivers to meet up and get out energy, have fun, learn through play, no matter what the weather is outside. We plan to make it a calming, inviting space for kids and grown-ups who, quite frankly, are always looking for a change of scenery, an extra place to go. As some of you know, I grew up here. My husband and I both grew up here in Bronxville. And after living in several different cities, we moved back right before COVID, actually, to give our children the same wonderful upbringing that we had, and we were so fortunate enough to have here. When we moved from Manhattan, our kids were 1, 3, and 5. In Manhattan, we had playrooms in our neighborhood that we went to all the time. So when we got out to Bronxville, we kept asking ourselves, like, where's the playroom? We would really love a playroom. And the more people we talked to in town, the more consensus there was that parents with young children would love a space like this. And I think post-COVID, there are more families with young children out here. That's anecdotal. I also did some research and found other forms of demand. When the Maltby Playground was created, the people who helped raise the money said that they raised almost $500,000 in just a few months. The Bronxville Public Library across the street, their story time for toddlers can get up to 200 people. When they're inside, they have to limit it to 100. So there's demand here. And then I guess the question is sort of why this space? From the beginning, I felt very strongly that in a walkable town, that this place should be in a location that's within walking distance. To take it the next step further, I wanted to have it in a place where people are already walking, where they're already going. And 108 Pondfield really fit the bill. It's right next to a bakery and a shop that sells toys. Small children are already in this area. So this could be another stop on their morning walk, a grocery run, or it could be a destination after parents are dropping their kids off at the big school or the other preschools around here. Last week, I went to the space, 108 Pondfield, and I stood outside and I counted the strollers that went by from 8:30 to 1:30, and I counted 97 strollers that were already walking by this location. So I think, as I said before, I just sort of want to get across that I really do feel, as a lifelong resident, that this is the kind of business that will add to the fabric of the town. Most people I've talked to want it. I think it will enhance the village in a positive way. I could go on and on. I know that there were some questions raised in my application. I know that I've asked for a couple of waivers. I'm happy to go sort of in any direction that you guys want. I could talk forever about this, the business. I can tell you about my background in child development or my experience in startups. But I just wanted to give you a little bit about what it is and why we think it would be a good fit here.
Yeah, so maybe I'll kick us off, and I'm sure others will have questions too. I think, and my guess is others will all feel the same, that, this is something that the village could use. I don't know whether other villages around have similar, play spaces, but it seems like, a really good, addition to the village in terms of the concept. And I think what we're all struggling with is the location. I think as you mentioned, I think that's really the challenge. What makes it a great location from a business perspective, because of all the strollers going by, I think also makes it a little challenging when you think about, pickup, drop-off, traffic, parking, et cetera. When you think about the Bronxville School or the Reformed Church Nursery School, this is not on that scale, but I'm sure you're aware of the backups and challenges, and those aren't in the center of town. So I think, at least in thinking about this, I was thinking about, for instance, the martial arts space that's over on Craft that also has a lot of young people coming in and out, but is in a location that's more on the edge, where it's easier to drop off and pick up, et cetera. And I think the balancing act we're all going to have to think about is, on the one hand, having a terrific use that I think would be very popular, but on the other hand, at least what seems to me to be a problematic location. Any thoughts on that before we let other people ask questions?
Yeah. I think my thoughts are mostly that the people are there, right? We anticipate this sort of to be an extra stop once they're in the village, right? I think that, as I said, the 97 strollers that went by, they just sort of veer in and veer out again, right? They are there. I think with the sort of drop-off at the other schools, there's a car line, right, where people wait in their car and the kids have to come out, and that sort of causes all the backup. This would be a place that caregivers bring children to, so they would be in the space and then they would leave, as if they're visiting a retail store. It's a similar sort of procedure, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, why don't others with questions, why don't we go around the horn?
I'll start with a couple of, I think noise got brought up a lot, but I think the way you have it configured, I can't imagine that noise would be a problem. It looks like you have a reception area, a wall, and then you have the play area. So do you see any concerns? I know that there was something about noise dampening and putting something on the walls or whatever, but...
Yeah, no, I don't have any concern. I'm not sure where that concern was raised, but we, do plan to put in sort of materials within the walls to make it as soundproof as we can. But it will be, little children playing around. A lot of them can't talk, to be honest. And we'll have little music classes, but they're very, it would be little small maracas. They're toddlers. And we don't plan to open really early or really late at night. We don't plan to be open up really early or really late at night. It's just going to be children in a little sort of small area within the space.
Yeah, we're going to have a public comment
That
period,
was actually
but-
my next question. How do you regulate flow? I think you said in your write-ups that you would start with sort of walk-ins, and then online, I think, is next, and then membership after that. But if you get 15 kids in the space, what do you lock the door and say no more?
I mean, essentially, right? I think when you're doing it in person, you have to say, please don't come in. When it turns into an online registration, it will be full, and you can't come in, right?
But do you know how long people are going to be there for?
So-
I think the max time is an hour and a half.
So an average is about an hour and a half, and if you've ever been with a toddler, an hour and a half is plenty of time. You can regulate the time if you want. Some places don't regulate the time, and I think it's because there's a natural time. Kids don't stay there for long. Caregivers don't want to stay there for long. You kind of come in, you have your fun, and then you leave. So, regulating it is something that some places do. And, it's easy to do with online and in person. And it's typical for an hour and a half to be the time frame. You would sort of register on the hour or the half hour, and then you get your block. So you can keep control of how many children there are at
How did you come up with the number of 15?
15.
And I don't know what the max capacity or occupancy of that space is, but I think your 15 is less than that number, correct?
Yes, yes. So each child will have a caregiver with them. They're not getting dropped off. So for every child, there will be a caregiver. Now, there could be a caregiver for 2 children, right? So I used to go in with my 3 children. So there would be 3 children to 1 caregiver. But there has to be somebody responsible for the child that's not an employee at the space. And 15 for sort of a class feels right. It's, a typical sort of nursery school class, for example. 15 just feels like a number. It's, it's not a huge space. So we wanted to feel comfortable in there, right? We might be able to stuff a lot of people in there, but we want people to have a nice time and feel relaxed and enjoy the space.
I mean, just looking at these photos here, it looks like the space is fairly well filled up, because it isn't a big space, is it?
Yeah, so those are just sort of examples of kind of the vibe that we're going for. We'd love sort of some pretend play, imaginary play area for little kids. We'd love a place for tiny babies where they can sort of crawl and play on soft mats. Those are sort of to give an example of the feel of it, right? We want it to be like open and airy and light and natural and, and I think even at your home, you sometimes take away toys when they've been playing with them for a long time, then you bring them back again when it's exciting. So we'll move things around and we'll change things, but we're not going to crowd it.
Okay, I think that's my questions. I think Michael brought up the biggest concern about just the, being on Pondfield, the drop-off, et cetera, so.
Albert, question?
Yeah, hey. Question I had was, I'm sorry we don't have the little, but if you have this nice map you have, where you have the outline of it, you can take mine if you want.
Yeah, probably
I was a little confused. You have the classroom, and then there's something called Playroom, and then there's this area between the classroom, playroom, and the reception. Is this all going to be play? Yeah, could you just hand this over to her? You see in the squigglies, Liz? Yeah, that squiggly, the squiggly and then the squiggly below it. Yep. So that whole thing is the play.
Yes,
Thanks.
yes. So
Let's get you back to the mic, and then, thanks.
Thanks. Sorry you had to come up for that.
yes, that's supposed to be a play area too. So depending on how we feel it works best for the children, it could be a little place for crawlers, for example, right, in that little nook.
So with kids and a caregiver, so the caregivers, do you sort of see them just interacting, or is there going to be like little benches or something for the, because sometimes you got to interact, sometimes we all have had kids.
Exactly. I think there's sort of, we'll have basically, maybe cubbies that are also benches,
Right.
or little sort of seats that can be moved around. So there will be places to sit. It depends on the age. You don't sit a lot.
Yeah.
But there will be we'll build in, as part of the structures, there's some columns in there. We might sort of put something around there that's just sort of a circular bench, right? So you kind of sit on that column.
So with 15 kids, say it gets the max, which is great for you, 15 kids and 15 caregivers or parents, you're pretty comfortable, there's plenty of space for that 30 out, and then there's also a instructor or supervisor, whatever they're called.
Yeah, we do feel comfortable. I will say also, in my experience in startups, you kind of have to go in with a plan and then iterate, right? So
Right.
we believe that 15 will feel comfortable, but we haven't been in the space yet. So we'll never go above what we're allowed to have, but we might go below depending on what it feels like in there. It's hard to know until you're actually there. So again, we're going to go in with a plan and see. And adjust.
Great, thanks for answering that. And then when you have like a classroom full of kids and then a playroom full of kids, and everyone has a stroller, there was a couple, in one of the submissions, you have a space for 8 strollers, but I think that's for open strollers and they can be compacted. But if you say you have 30 strollers sitting there, are they going to be able to fit in that? Or you'll configure it in a way that will make it fit?
Yes. So again, we have a spot for 8 big open strollers. Strollers can be folded. We can fold strollers. We can, sort of tuck them in. And the other thing that we've talked about is sort of, again, that sort of barrier between the entryway and the play space is also going to be, cubbies for shoes, and it will be, maybe seats on the other side. It can be moved too, right? So we could adjust if we feel like the strollers can't fit in that open area. We could sort of push it back a little bit, right, into the play space. I don't think everyone will stroller in, right? I think there will be a combination, so I don't think we're going to have everyone strollering, everyone driving. We're hoping for a good mix, and we will figure out how to accommodate them.
That was one of my next question is, people might be coming from RCNS or from whatever, or just they live close by. I guess for us as well to think about is, say everyone had a car would be the extreme example on one side. You have like 30-something plus cars, which, given all this analysis we've read, is a lot for people to find, especially if it's bad weather. We want to be very careful that we don't start this double parking to drop off or park in that little alleyway between, I forget where it is, but the alleyway there that gets back in the thing. That we have to be a little careful that's going to be one of our big concerns, I think, is we don't want to start that process, and I know you don't want to start that process, because you see what happens on Park Avenue already with the bagel store and the rest. It becomes a disaster, and that's a pretty big thoroughfare. So I guess my question to you is, do you have any sense of what percentage of the kids' caregivers are going to be going through with strollers or not strollers, or via vehicle of some kind, which they have to park, and then, because little kids, you can't be like, get out, I'll come back in.
Right.
You have to find a spot.
Right.
But we don't want them to like double park, go in, and say, oh, Mike, hold on to Albert until I get back.
Yeah. So the one thing we don't want to get in the business of is watch my kid for 5 minutes,
Good,
right?
good,
So we don't want to do that. Okay. We're not going to let that happen. So there won't be any ability for one caregiver to throw their kid out the door and say, take this kid until I come back. So that's not going to happen.
Okay. I'm just thinking,
We don't want that. There will always have to be a caregiver with the child. So there's not going to be this sort of double parking running in. They're either going to find a spot or they're going to stroller.
And for the employee, what kind of certifications, is there sort of some certification? Obviously, you're very well versed in all this. Do you have to hire someone with certain skills? Obviously, that they have to know CPR, they have to know any other things they have to know?
Yeah,
for the employees you're going to hire?
Because we are not in charge of the children, there technically aren't any things that we have to do.
Right.
They will sign a waiver. The caregivers will sign a waiver, which is standard at all of these sort of.
Yeah, when you go to these things, you sign a waiver, and which I've also heard is just, I don't know if you're a lawyer, but that when you sign these waivers, some people tell me that it's not really, they can't really go, it's not really, it's sort of a fake document. They can't really enforce that. So I just want to protect you. So just make sure it's a good waiver, Dad.
Thank you.
Just a clarification on something that Albert was getting to. People would come in and leave on a staggered basis, correct? I mean, you would have the 8:30 to 10 slot, and there's 15 people going for that, and then you have the next slot, 15 people coming.
Correct.
That's
Correct. No, it would be, you'd sign up, maybe you would sign up for 8 a.m., or you'd sign up for 8:30, or you'd sign up for 9, and then you get your sort of hour and a half, if we restrict it, right? You would then
so
have
people
to.
are always coming in and going out at different times.
Yeah, it wouldn't be sort of like this rush for the 10 a.m.
If you had classes, you'd have more of that kind of thing.
Correct. There would be if it was a 9 a.m. class.
Yeah.
I'll just have a couple more minutes. Yeah. So thanks for asking. That was more my design questions. Then I had my other questions. I think the concept is fantastic. It's everyone will love it. I do have a couple concerns, and I'll just lay them out there now. You've talked about already, it's a very busy sidewalk, with kids during the weekdays going back and forth. Weekends, it's a little less. It's, just more mellow. I already mentioned the drop-off in bad weather. We have to be really careful about not letting that become an issue, because, then we get yelled at for letting this happen. There's several letters of support. Maybe some people here are going to talk about that. The one thing I sort of a little concerned about in those letters was it's also a way for the parents to sort of socialize, so we don't want to make this a parent socialization place too. Obviously, mothers and fathers and caregivers want to meet each other, and that's a great place for it. But we want to keep them all inside the facility, not, I guess what I'm getting at is we don't want to congregate outside. We want to keep the outside space clear of strollers, obviously, during drop-off pickup, there's going to be activity, and Tops might benefit greatly, or the store next door. But we don't want to have people make it a congregation place, and I'm sure you'll take care of that. That's it for now. Thanks.
Mike?
Thank you. I have just some questions specifically on the flow of the guests, I guess. What is the target age of the children that will be attending the services?
So the target age is sort of toddler. It's sort of the kids who don't get to go to preschool yet, so you sort of drop off your kids at the various school, and then you're hanging out with the baby up until probably maybe 5 years old, I'd say. Maybe they're only a couple hours in preschool, and you're finding stuff to do for the rest of the day, every day. So it's the youngest crowd.
Got it. And then, just to be clear, on the max number of occupants, can you talk about, what's the range of children that will be there and adults kind of at a theoretical peak period, and what you think is more representative of kind of an average occupancy?
Yeah, so I think there is concern that if you're having a class at the same time that you're able to have children play in the front, that could sort of balloon and have too many people. It's anecdotal, but we've found that in those play spaces, people really sort of go for the classes, and there isn't as many kids playing at the same time. Again, I think we're going to try to feel what's comfortable, and if it feels like there's too many people in the space, then we will restrict it. We don't want crowding in there. I think that we probably won't ever hit the occupancy. It just won't feel good. So I think, and also if we feel like the classes and the open play can't happen at the same time, then we'll adjust. Maybe there won't be open play at the same time. We just have to see, I think.
Got it. And so it's not a drop-off facility? Caretakers have to stay on premise, or what distance can they be? Can they even be in Tops, or they actually have to be within the facility?
In the facility, yeah.
Great. I think one of my big questions, dovetailing to what we talked about, is the challenges around transition periods when people are coming and going, and reducing congestion on the sidewalk and on drop-off. I'd like to hear a little bit more about some of the mitigation, and a lot of it, I think, goes into mitigation measures, because again, you don't know exactly what the traffic patterns are going to look like now, but can you talk a little bit more about some of the measures that you think you can take to reduce the flow in those periods of times, reduce any constriction on the sidewalk, blockage of items and things like that?
Yeah. We will never have a class back-to-back, right? We would never have sort of one class ends and then the other class starts. I think we'd have to give sort of a half hour in between, right? So people can leave, people can come in. That would be way down the line. That would be great if we're having so many classes that we have to spread them out so much. But we would obviously never make them on top of each other. Same thing if we were to do birthday parties. We would never have one end and then the other start. We'd have to give time for people to come and go. Is that helpful?
And are there allowed strollers to be outside at all, or they always have to be within inside the facility?
They'll always be inside.
Right.
They'll always be inside.
Perfect. That's all for me. Thank you.
Yes, so just maybe to wrap up the questions, and I think we'll want to hear from our consultant and hear from the public, et cetera, but have you considered other locations? Because, we think about, I think there's I'm not that familiar, our kids are up and out at this point, but there's, I think, a Sprout program that meets maybe over at the cinema, and, in general, when you think about, say, Kraft Avenue versus Pondfield, in terms of congestion and drop-off and all the rest of it, something like Kraft has a lot of advantages. So how hard have you looked for other spaces, and what's your thought been about other spaces?
So when I moved here, it was before COVID, so I've been looking sort of since before COVID, and the spaces are not large on Craft. They're very small. And I think it would be very hard. I think, the space we have is somewhat small, but it's a very, sizable space. So I think once you get over there, there's just not a lot of options.
Yep.
And, instead of being inside of a movie theater, we wanted our own space and our own destination.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a lot of turnover. There hasn't been a lot of large spaces, and so
Yeah.
we tried.
It's just, I think that's what we're digging in on, because I think this would be very easy in another location, and that's what we're all trying to figure out. So we have if you're all set, we have our consultant here, and we'd just like to, he reviewed the application, maybe he could come to the mic and help us out a little bit with questions, if that's okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name's Eric Dorsch, landscape architect with KSCJ Consulting out of Armonk, New York. We're currently the consulting village engineers, planners, and landscape architects. We reviewed this application as we review other applications that come across through the village, building permit applications, site plan approval applications, engineering drawings, and so on. So we provided a couple memos on this application, and I'd be happy to answer any specific questions that anyone has, or I can go down the memo or hit some items or whatever format
I'll start
you'd like.
with a question or two, and then maybe you can sort of, take it from there. Sure. It seems like the parking study had to, be revised to capture, what everyone thought would be the best data. But I think the fundamental truth we all have to acknowledge is there isn't more parking, right, in the village. It's a village that is tight on parking, and whatever is done here will be incremental and will probably involve, more traffic and more parking than the current use of the property. But did you have any particular views on sort of the parking and traffic issues? Because I think that's a lot of what we're focusing on.
Sure, that's absolutely a strong point of consideration for sure, based on everything we've discussed. I'm just going to point out the former retail use. I have the code sections if anyone's curious. I won't bore you with all the specific numbers and letters. But just for information, the former retail use, to put it onto perspective, was required to provide 5 off-street parking spaces, 1 off-street space per every 300 square feet of the first 2,500 square feet of gross floor area. The space is only about 1,400 and change, so they only needed 5 spaces per the zoning regulations, off-street parking. And this building, its conglomerate of stores, has no dedicated off-street parking. I think that's one of the unique challenges and benefits of the village of Bronxville, in a sense that it creates a unique urban fabric and density and character that I think everyone is fond of, but poses challenges for something, a use that comes in that may exceed what it can handle. So And on the contrary, the other side is that, not contrary, but the other side of that is the current use that's being proposed would require 10 off-street parking spaces. So by the book, by the codes, it's required double the off-street parking, and we've all talked about potential conditions or situations, weather. So I leave it really up to the board to make the decision based on the unique conditions in the village, but I'm just trying to present the facts, really. Happy to continue the discussion. I will point out about the parking study, at the first round of the study, the Cedar parking lot next to the Acme, on the east side of the Acme grocery store, the first round of the parking study, 10 additional spaces were counted as available, and they're the most southern row of spaces, the permit parking spaces in the Cedar lot, and they were overlooked as potentially available to the public. The DTS Provident, the consulting firm that did the parking study. So after we reviewed the first round of the study, they came back and said, oh, yep, we missed that. Those were permit spaces, so they had to remove some of the available spaces that they flagged. And so during the Tuesday, they only did 2 days. During the Tuesday, the study they conducted was during the school year. The parameters were within 300-foot radius of the use, and it was conducted during the school year when there were no holidays to get a bearing or barometer of a typical hustle and bustle of the village. So that made sense. However, I think maybe 1 or 2 more days wouldn't hurt to get a better, more well-rounded picture, perhaps, of the parking situation, since the conditions are unique. So anyways, on the Tuesday that the study was conducted, 27 original spaces were flagged as available within the 300-foot radius, and there's a diagram indicating all of the lots available to the public. And it went from 27 down to 23. There were 4 spaces in that permit parking row that were previously flagged as available that they had to revoke because of a permit space versus a metered public space. And on the the Saturday that it was conducted, there were 8 spaces available. There were 10 spaces overall available out of the 367 spaces total, 376, that were available in all the public lots. Only 10 were available on that Sunday, and 2 of them were in that permit row on the Cedar lot, so it went from 10 to 8. The mention was made in the study about a funeral ceremony that was going on. I think that's a notable thing to raise, or a point to raise. However, I think that could happen quite frequently. I think various things like that could happen quite frequently, and I think one should plan for the unknown in a way, or at least try to make provisions or have a plan. So just wanted to point that out.
There's a comment here, and I'm not sure what it's part of, but it says, it talks about the traffic study and says, these indicated that the proposed use would require similar or less parking than the previous retail use.
Do you know which number that is, by chance?
13.
13.
It was just 2 pages attached to the parking study.
That's
Attached to the parking study. Yeah, I don't have.
Yeah, that might have been the applicant's language
Yeah,
as
that's
opposed
not-
to the
that's not his.
consultant's
This
language.
is-
Yeah.
Is that a response to?
Yeah, please.
So according to DTS, who did the parking study, there's sort of 2 numbers that we can work with, right? There's the village, which has 5 for retail and 10 for an indoor recreation facility. Then there's sort of what he says every municipality and state follow, which is something called the Institute of Transportation Engineers Manual. And that's where the numbers come that are 6 for retail and 6 for indoor recreation facility. On the weekends for retail, it goes to 8 for retail. So that's where the indoor recreation facility would actually be a little bit lower, would require less parking. So it's according to this manual that he and his fellow traffic engineers go by.
Yes.
So that's sort of where the
Data
numbers
provided
are.
by the applicant.
Okay.
So I think it's depending on which numbers we're using. I also think, sorry, while I'm up here, it's worth noting that the craft lot, the lot that's the train station, is not part of the 300-foot radius, so it was not counted. So on a Saturday, when there aren't a lot of commuters and there's a lot of extra parking there, that would also be available. It wasn't included in the study because it's just a little bit farther. But just to sort of note in terms of, available spaces, I think there's a lot usually in the train station.
Okay.
And the resident parking that got taken away, I'm hoping that residents with resident stickers will also come, so.
Okay, other questions for the consultant?
My
Or
question
for-
is,
yeah.
for the consultant, how was the 300-foot radius set and why?
So those were parameters that were developed with the previous consulting engineer, and we had thought that was logical, but that was not set by us. That was a measure that was previously set that was discussed and was agreed to continue. So I'm not sure what the source of that officially is.
Christina, do you know?
The applicant reached out to Hardesty Hanover, assuming that we were still working with them, and they responded, like the kindness of their heart, responded and gave the typical answer that they've always done with us for years and years and years. So that was the radius that they told them that was typically done here. So that's what they want.
Okay.
In other consulting studies that your firm has done, do you use a 300-foot radius or something different?
It's really situational. I can't necessarily say compare apples to apples. It's based on density. I don't have any specific metrics that I could quote at the moment. I don't know if I could answer that question fully at the moment. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Couple questions.
Yeah.
On page 2, number 4 of your memo, you're talking about a variance that the applicant is asking us to waive, and you're saying a variance is required. Also, I believe it's also on Kevin's piece, he also says zoning variance would be required. So why would, and I guess it has to do with 250 feet from the nearest residential boundary. This is approximately 140 feet.
That's correct. Yeah.
Why would we issue a waiver?
The applicant's requesting.
I know that.
Yeah. I'm not sure. That's up to you.
What you're suggesting that they need to get the waiver? I mean, they need to get the variance?
No, I'm just citing the village code. That section, it says that the entrance to any indoor recreation facility shall be at least 250 feet from the nearest residential district boundary.
Okay.
And there's the resident C district just to the south on Pondfield of the storefront or the space. And measuring it on a GIS map, it was 140 feet from resident C. So by the code, it requires a variance because of its proximity to the residential.
And this is specific to a recreational facility?
Correct.
Because obviously CVS is not a recreational facility, and it's
Correct.
close.
It's a special use, special permit that requires that.
So sorry, Liz, is that why you were sort of saying, because there's other things there that are equally the same? I mean, you have CVS, you have Tops Bakery, they're not recreational, but they're not going to be within the 250 feet either. They're all would be in violation of that.
Correct.
Okay,
It's
just
the
wanted to make sure.
type
Okay.
of use.
Just wanted to,
that-
this is all above my pay grade, so just want to, okay, thanks. Another question for you? Thanks, thank you. Under your site plan number 4, you're saying that it appears the architectural plans do not demonstrate that there's a total area devoted to concession of and eating that will not exceed 10%. Do we know if that's true or not?
Basically, from our standpoint, it'd be helpful to see, for the architect to provide a plan diagram that illustrates the areas that are devoted to eating or concession. Based on the second round of drawings submitted from our first memo, the architect has indicated on the drawings that there is no designated concession area.
That's
quote
what I'm
unquote.
saying.
So it'd be nice to see a diagram that illustrates, because there are birthday parties going on, so technically there are eating areas, quote unquote, and there's a sink in the conference room that I suspect is for a party or for a cake or for juice and soda and ice and whatever. So, or if there's an argument that there is no official eating area, I think that the architect and the applicant should provide a little bit more information to make that clear, based on what the code is requiring.
Okay. Is it just going to be like bring in from Tops, bring in pizzas, that good? So you're not going to be cooking things there?
We're not gonna be cooking, we're not gonna be selling anything, we're just sort of saying.
It's going to be brought in either by you or?
Yeah,
Okay.
and you want to get.
So that's why you don't have a space dedicated here for, well, obviously you have a sink, you have trash, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to understand that piece. And then my last question, sir, was under, is it, what page is it, 4 or 5? You go through under 3, B, C, D, E, you sort of are recommending, it seems more, we talked about the spaces already. You also seem to have a little bit of an issue like I did with the 8 strollers. Is that just because if you have maximum occupancy, it's going to be small?
Correct. Yeah, I was wondering what the variable conditions may arise, and what are you going to do about extra strollers or overlap, and
Yeah.
was requesting essentially more information, or trying to spark conversation where everyone can get on the same page.
Okay. If there aren't any other questions for our consultant, maybe we'll open up the public meeting, or do you have one, Tom? Go ahead, please.
Quick one for Elizabeth. I assume you've done an economic model here or analysis. So when you say, gosh, we may be too many people at 15 or whatever, and we'll cut that back, or what sort of level do you have to have of people coming in to be profitable?
It's a great question. I think that we have a lot of different things going on. We're going to sort of try to have classes, we're going to try to have birthday parties, and we're going to see sort of where we have the success and probably lean into those, right? And go from there. But 15 kids per hour, or at a time, pencils.
That sort of gets you to profitable?
And what would you charge per, you're charging per hour and a half time, or?
Yep, yes. So, standard around the area are, between $35 and $40 for each time you go in. It's like going to Pure Bar, or going to Soul Cycle, or going to a play space. They all sort of hover around that sort of $35 to $40 area.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, why don't we open up the public meeting? Whoever would like to make comments, could you please come up to the mic and identify yourself, and please just march on up. You don't have to be called on.
And I did submit, my name.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Oh, I don't know. My name's Victoria Danjo, and I am a lifelong resident here. I raised my boys here, and I know about the parks, and I know about all the nursery schools and all the other little wonderful community children-inspired things that we provide for the children, along with our homes. I'm very concerned about everything has been addressed. All my concerns have been addressed, so I'm not bringing up anything that you haven't already discussed, but I do live very nearby. I work very nearby, and I might have a unique perspective that perhaps many of you don't have, and that is I can see the traffic on Pondfield Road is out of control. and you can do all of your studies, you can do all of your analysis, and we have done that as a community, and we have paid our tax dollars to go toward all those studies. It's a round peg in a square hole, or whatever, you square peg in a round hole. It's going to, I believe a business like this is going to create a lot more traffic. It's human nature to want to, I see it all the time. People are double parking, they're running into CVS to grab something, they're running into Value Drug. It's happening constantly. You get the backup of traffic, people get impatient, rightly so. They start honking their horn, it becomes a quality of life issue. It happens constantly. And if you don't believe me, please spend just one day on a corner in this village, and you will see it. People are making U-turns. As you can see, the beautiful quality that was always this village is now being disturbed and disrupted because we have to put up all of these stanchions now, and we have to have all this signage, please don't make a U-turn. It's ugly, it's an eyesore, and people are still making these traffic infractions. So I don't think having a business, Playroom for Kids business, is going to mitigate that at all. Secondly, I think this is such a beautiful village, and the character, I would love to see, and I speak for so many people, I'm with the public all day long, and everyone wants to see the fun stores that we used to have. Forget the coffee shops, please. Forget the more eateries, please. We don't need any more of that. It's bringing in a lot of litter. We'd love to see some businesses, some retail shops, some things that are vibrant, that are going to bring people into our community and want to spend money, and are not going to be there for periods of time, taking up parking spots or what have you. I don't object to the applicant's idea. I think it's, whatever floats your boat, okay, great. But I think this is a really bad location, and I think it should be, I personally am recommending that it's not approved, but I hope that they can find another location, perhaps Pondfield Road West. You mentioned the karate place over on Craft Avenue, on the other side of the train track. This is not a good spot. I'm also concerned about the hours. I understand it's going to be open 7 days a week. Most businesses open at 9 and close at 5 or at 6 o'clock at the very latest, unless you're a restaurant. There will be congregations. Again, it's human nature. You can't police this. You can't be out there all the time telling the nannies and the mothers, you can't stand out here. You can't have your, 3 strollers out here. You're going to start, it's not going to be nice for your business. So I think that the applicant mentioned birthday parties. If you start to have parties in this location, does this mean we're bringing in entertainers? Are there going to be clowns? Are there going to be music makers? And I used to bring my kids to many of those kinds of things at local churches, and you would have music and you'd have performers, and it would be so much fun. But they were in churches, they were remote, they were with their own parking lots, it worked. Is that the kind of, business that we're looking at, or are they going to be bringing in that kind of outside people? I just think that our business area is already strained so much, and I don't want to see it erode the quality of our life anymore. Again, I've lived here all of my life. There have been a lot of changes, and a lot of it is out of our control, but some of it is in our control. And I just think it would be really lovely to I know we're very popular. Everybody wants to get into the village, rightly so. I'm sure we could find a vibrant retail place that can come in and really be an exciting addition. And perhaps, this business could find a place that might be more appropriate that won't create extra noise, extra traffic. Anyway, that's basically what I have to say. But I think the intentions are great. I'm not, as I said, I'm not objecting to it, but I am objecting to the site. And anyway, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. And the applicant will have a chance when we're done with this to address things. Why don't we keep the public comment open? Is there someone else who'd like to come up? Could you please identify yourself?
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Flannery Gollenberg. I attended Bronxville K through 12, grew up at 2 Oval Court, and now live with my family at 7 Concordia Place. My husband and I have 3 children who attend the Bronxville school, Ryan, who is 9, Owen, who is 8, and Taylor, who is 6. I stand up here tonight to show my strong support for the Bronxville Playroom. Having raised our children in this town, I know how needed this space is. We often looked for places like this to take our children to when they were younger, and they were often too far away. Bronxville is a family-friendly village, and that's why we live here, and we need more safe spaces for children to play. The demand for this space is even more evident when you visit the busy playgrounds in the area. The school playground, Sagamore Park, and the great addition of Maltby Park, thank you for your help on that, are always filled with children and their caregivers. The Bronxville Library, another spot we often visit, is often at capacity for their various programs for children. Just walking through town, you can see the numerous families with strollers who I'm sure would love a safe, fun, and inviting place to play, just as I would have when my children were younger. And I'm sure you've seen all the numerous letters of support from other village families. Furthermore, having a master's degree in education and having taught at the Chapel School for 10 years, I know the vital role imaginative and creative play is for children. Their communication skills, problem-solving skills, and overall brain development will be positively impacted with time spent at the Bronxville Playroom. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't say a few words, although I could have many, about Liz Hayden Fitzgerald. Not only is she a dear friend since Bronxville Elementary School, but she is an amazing mother to her 3 children, and her passion for this business venture is absolutely inspiring. She has put countless hours into planning and designing an amazing space that will undeniably be an asset to this village. Her love for this village, community, and commitment to make this the best space for children and their families is incredible. In closing, I so appreciate the time to speak to you all tonight. And again, please urge you to allow the Bronxville Playroom to become a vital part of this special, special village. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else from the public who'd like to come up and say a few words? There are 2 of you raising it. Why don't you come up and then you, if that's okay, please.
Hi, my name is Judy DeYoung. I'm a magazine editor. I've lived here for 21 years. I live in Bronxville Towers. I face Pondfield in my co-op. I think this is the worst idea. It will change the complexion of the community. I am very familiar with the space because of some work my husband has done in terms of photography. It's a very, very tiny space. I don't think it's suitable. I wanted to ask about ventilation. The other thing is, my concern is congestion with all these big strollers. Already the streets are clogged, and I think it's going to bring in a lot of transient people. Am I correct? Is this just for Bronxville residents or for anybody in the area?
I don't think we need the applicant for that. Any business in Bronxville is open to anyone.
I see. So I am against it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please, come on up.
Hi, my name is Jill Babbage. I live at 9 Paddington Circle. I didn't have anything prepared. I think I strongly agree with this idea. I understand people's concerns, and I just kind of want to address or show my views on the parking situation, which seems to be the issue. At the end of the day, something is going into that space. No matter what, we're going to need more parking spaces for whatever ends up going there. And the way I see it, this is a place where people are going to be spending half hour, a longer amount of time. With that typically comes the willingness to park farther away. The fact that the craft lot was not considered, people would easily go to the craft lot. You know, you're not going to go run in and get a muffin and park 500 feet away, but if you're spending an hour someplace, you will. And also the mere fact that this is for children and they will be in strollers. Everyone's aware of the parking situation in Bronxville, and they try to avoid it as much as possible if they can. So I think the fact that strollers are going to be used, it really is going to reduce the amount of parking spaces needed. And as I said, I think people will be willing to park farther, walk longer to get there because they will be spending more time at this place. And again, something is going to go into that retail spot and need parking spaces. Do you want something where people are coming in and out or, you know, going and staying? Yes, there'll be a lot of strollers coming in, but they're not coming in and out every 5 minutes. It's spaced out more. I just wanted to share my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else from the public, please come on up.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Absher. I live at 349 Pondfield Road. I'm not going to speak too much about what a wonderful idea this is because I think we all recognize it. Anyone who's had children knows the desperation for activities for children when it's too hot, too cold, the weekend, the summer, before they're too old to be in school. I mean, all 3 of my children would be appropriate for this space, and I would die to have the opportunity to bring them there. It is so hard to find something nearby, actually. Certainly nothing exactly like this in the community, and we find ourselves driving to a lot of other towns and throughout Yonkers and Eastchester to find activities for them. So I feel like that's been really well expressed. As for, you know, this issue, and I want to address the issue with clogging up the town and parking, which we all know exists, it's absolutely true, but I feel like we have to evolve as our community evolves, and I've seen since COVID the explosion in like young families. There are just so many babies here. This is who we are now, and it's very exciting. There are so many young moms who came here around that COVID time and are now part of this community and need things to do with their children and stroll them around. I mean, I live close to Siwanoy. I'd love to drive, but I often walk. We can make those changes, and we can find responsible parking. And if this is a place where people have to enter and watch their children as they responsibly should, and I'm sure for insurance reasons that's excellent, you know, they're not going to be outside, they're not going to be chatting, they'll be in the building with their stroller. They're not parking, running in, as someone said, like grabbing them up into it. That's just not an option for this kind of business. And I say business without quotes, it's clearly a business. So I don't see that as an issue, or more so one that would be with any other business. So I think it would just be an invaluable resource for the community that we are now, which is one filled with babies.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Hi, my name is Kate Steele. I live at 3 Fulling Avenue. I've lived in Bronxville for 5 years. I also, like a lot of the ladies here, have 3 little children. I am in full favor of this amazing business opportunity. I think it would be an incredible addition to this town. I am a stay-at-home mom. I'm a former attorney, but I'm home with my kids now. So I frequent a lot of classes and play spaces, and I know a lot of the concern here tonight is the parking and the congestion. But just wanted to point out 2 things. One is there's been discussing drop-off and pickup. This is not a school. We will not be dropping off. We will be there. It's like going into a restaurant. 15 people in a restaurant, go and stay. To me, it's the same thing. I don't see a drop-off line. There's no need for that. It's going into a storefront. All the time there's 15 people in a store. So to me, I don't see that as an issue. I'm also someone who walks a lot. I live on the edge of town, but I often walk to school. If I don't, I drop off my child at RCNS. There's parking behind the firehouse there. I often walk through town from there. So that would be my plan. That is well beyond the 300 feet. But to me, that is nothing. And I know from seeing other moms walking around, we're Bronxville moms, we're walkers. That's nothing to us. So I think the 300, which I think has been questioned, appears quite arbitrary. And I think there's going to be plenty of people on foot. I also think, having gone to other play spaces in other towns, such as Pelham and others, I've never, and I'm a social mom, I've never had, outside of a play space, spent a long time talking to other parents. After, we're usually on a schedule after the play space is done. It's time for lunch. It's time for nap. I'm getting to my house to nap the kids before this big school pickup. Like, we're all pretty busy, and I don't think there will have been plenty of time to socialize inside the play space. I don't think there'll be lots of moms on the strollers outside clogging up the streets. I just don't see that happening. So I just wanted to give my opinion on those matters, and just, again, I have full faith that Liz will be able to address any kind of challenges that were to arise, and I give my full, I would be in super support of this initiative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, please.
I'm Louise Bodwin. I've lived in Bronxville since 1980. I raised my two daughters here who are in their mid to late 40s now. And I don't know how we all did it back in our day. I mean, toddlers, in my opinion, and I'm the oldest girl of 9 children also, so I've seen it. I personally don't even think these kinds of things are great for 2-year-olds. I think they're better in smaller spaces at home with the little neighborhood kids coming in. And I do think that Pondfield Road is too busy for this area, for this sort of a thing. And I'm just old-fashioned mother. Backyard, on the kitchen floor, wherever. But I'm not a big fan of organized stuff all the time, but obviously I'm in the minority, so I just had to say that.
But thank you. Understood. Anyone else from the public? Okay, I'd like to give the applicant a chance just to address any questions that were raised. If you want to. It's all up to you.
There was one specific question I felt like was a question about sort of birthday parties and bringing in outside sort of clowns or I think that the point of this birthday party is to go to a space to play. So that is the birthday party, right? So some birthday parties are at trampoline parks and you go and you do the trampolines, and some have climbing walls and you do that. This is to play in the space and then you sort of celebrate with a cake. It's not a place to bring in birthday parties. That is sort of the draw, is just playing. I don't know if that's clear. And then I just want to make one quick comment. I know that sort of parking and traffic gets very heightened in the middle of the day. Most toddlers and young kids have nap time, and that nap time happens to be usually right when it's the height of the parking problem. So kids often nap around 1 o'clock, right? So you have to get them home, you have to feed them, and they have to nap. So I will say, as far as sort of the issue of people in town and parking, there is sort of a lull right when we need it. Just wanted to sort of point that out.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other questions or.
No, that's helpful. So why don't we close the public meeting, or was there one more comment?
I think I interrupted myself earlier. Thank you. Yeah, I was remarking on the hours. Most of these places are, most of the businesses on Pondfield in this particular location, they open at 9 and close at 5 or at 6 unless you're a restaurant, as I had said earlier. I'm not sure exactly what the hours are going to be for this establishment, and I'm assuming it's going to be 7 days a week. That's just also a concern. It's nice for all of us when we go home to our homes that our homes. We cherish them, we love them as our private space.
Understood. Why don't we let the applicant just speak to the hours, and then I think we'll wrap up the public meeting, please.
We plan to be very consistent with the other businesses on the street, sort of at 8:30 to 5:30. Just like nap time, our customers would have been there early too, so very late at night, they're going to be home. But we would sort of have that sort of standard, typical business district hours. And it's the 7 days. And then on the weekends, we would have shorter hours, but we're being open. That was what we were going to do.
Okay, so with that, I'd propose that we close the public meeting and go into our discussion. Who would like to go first?
I just have a question, Michael. This requires a special use permit because it's not a retail space. Is that what is?
Yeah, Kevin, you could comment on this, but we've been told what other variances we would need to provide in order to approve it, but we would approve it if we do as a
No,
package.
but I think what I'm wondering is what else could go into that space? Could a restaurant go into that space, for instance?
The special use is because it's indoor recreation, not retail, so that's why we have to.
Your question is that you answered it yourself, the special use,
Okay.
because it's a recreation.
Because it's not retail.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay,
So it calls for more variances because of that.
okay.
Yeah.
Good. I just asked Kevin, you also wrote a memo we didn't get to touch on. In the end, you had a couple items to consider as conditions for approval.
Yeah. Maybe 10 to 1, not 9, to get a little more on Sunday before it starts.
Okay, anything else?
No, I don't think a waiver should be granted because they're within 200 feet of the resident C district, so I don't think that they should have been a variance for that.
Yep, so in any case, if we approve it, we would approve whatever the required variances or waivers are required with it. I understand that. Elizabeth, did you have a question?
No, I was just, we've sort of, my dad and I have gone through the codes and all of the different things, and so
He's pretty knowledgeable on
he's
that.
very
front,
knowledgeable.
yes.
He's very, but as far as I understand it, sort of the reason for that zoning variance is to sort of keep in check the late night restaurants and bars and movie theaters, stuff like that, right? That would really affect neighbors.
So not the midnight toddlers.
Exactly. We'll deal with those at home, unfortunately. They're not out on the streets. So I guess that's why I sort of feel like this is an appropriate place to ask for and get a waiver. Because again, we're sort of going to comply with all of the business district hours. And
So with that, I think we'll circle back to our discussion here. Who would like to go first? Mike, please.
I'm happy to go first. We continue to be faced with the evolution of our downtown shopping district. This evolution is being accelerated through the change in real estate types, with specifically retail and office struggling as a concept, either through changes in e-commerce or work-from-home policies. And so what we've seen recently is the closure of retail-oriented businesses, travel offices, retail stores, and really an opening of concepts that have been successful or can succeed, which is gyms, food establishments, coffee stores, and now our first proposal for a children activity space. I think on one end of the spectrum, we can have, these are the extremes, on one end, you fear a busy and congested downtown, but on the other end, we worry about, where there's plenty of parking space is the White Plains Mall, where it is free parking because no one is there. Neither do we want that, right? And so it's finding that balance to moderate between is I think where we're trying to solve for. We want to protect our downtown to be an area where people congregate, but we also don't want an area that we're scaring away concepts that will bring energy and life and traffic and livelihood to our downtown area. I think as we've gone through the discussion around concerns around traffic volumes, Liz has to be very excited about that because that implies there's a lot of people coming to the business, right? And that's a high-class problem. I'm sure that is something she wants to address. But as I think about our concerns around traffic, a lot of those can be mitigated by measures that the applicant takes, whether that's the max number of children at one time, the size of the reception area to make sure that there's no overflow out into the street, the hours of the day when they have kids activities and things like that. And so I think it's a little bit more of a give and take around the operations and the reception area that will drive whether that traffic becomes a concern in the area. I think the last thing I would say is this will be the kind of first and only child experience-oriented store in our district. A lot of it is retail for the adults or restaurants, which are clearly more adult-oriented. This would be our first children-oriented one. The closest comp would be Candy Rocks. They had historically thrown some parties. Having attended some of those and walked through the district when they have had those, I've never found them extremely problematic or heard complaints that Candy Rocks is throwing birthday parties and that it's not being managed. I think it goes again to the applicant. Can you manage a max number of children, appropriately in all these transition periods? And I think to your question earlier, is it really a max number that makes the business viable? It's probably not. It's the number over the course of the day, right? You can stick 40 kids at 9 a.m. and 40 kids at 4 p.m. The more important thing will be, a constant flow of a general number over the course of the day that I think helps make it viable. So, and the last thing I would say is I did think it was odd to exclude the Craft lot and, for that matter, the Kensington lot. These are lots that I think the village has invested in to provide more parking space in the area. And while they are not 300 feet away from there, they are available parking spaces for the community to use. So I think what I would say is, in summary, I'm excited that we are bringing a concept that continues to add vitality to our local downtown area when we are seeing retail businesses close. I don't want to see many vacant spaces. I think the applicant has taken some good initiatives to help mitigate some of the issues that we've discussed here today. There may be some things incremental on the margin, but I think they can be a good steward of that. And so I would be constructive and supportive of this application.
Okay, thank you. Who's next?
Okay. I think I agree with everything you've said, Mike. I think all your points are well taken. I think the concept is very good. It's very good for the community overall. It comes back to where we started, location. And, I just think from a marginal perspective, is it going to blow everything out of control as far as traffic and everything else on Pondfield Road? And I don't see that. It may add incrementally to it by some margin, but I don't think it's, and I think it's worth a go. And, I think particularly the mothers know, or the caretakers know how important this is to what they do on a day-to-day basis in the community overall. So I would be supportive.
Albert.
I think foot traffic and parking issues are a good problem for a village. In the village, we will fix it at some point. We've talked about it a lot before. We have to get people to walk more, as a lot of moms here do. That's probably the biggest issue, get them to walk more. As far as the application goes, I'm in complete favor of it. My one concern still is the sidewalk being unobstructed. I'm going to trust you're going to make that happen. I would sort of say I would add a condition to the application, but I think that's a bit aggressive. But that's my opinion, so I'm in favor of it. That's it.
Thanks. And so, speaking for myself, I think our village administrator has put it very well when he has said our town doesn't have a parking problem, it has a walking problem.
Yep.
And that if people would just leave the cars at home, it's a 1 square mile village, all those things can be managed. And look, with the addition of this, there will be more management to take place. I think, personally, I would have been a lot more happy if there had been a large enough space on Craft to put this. I think it would also make your life a lot easier in terms of people coming in and out, and I think the business could be just as successful in, a location like that. But it's not our job to relocate businesses from where they are to where we want them to be. It's to judge the application that's before us. So I think we're all in agreement on that. So would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve the applicant's application as is.
Do we have a second? Okay, and just to be clear, because usually we have, just one thing, usually we have Jim up here to help us make sure that our resolutions are just so. So we're going to have to rely a little on Kevin and Christina. Any approval here will be subject to all of the conditions and variances and waivers that we spoke about before. So we're wrapping this up as a package with a bow. And Jim, we will call upon your expertise for a second, yes.
Just a question, there were 2 waivers requested. Are those, because they were part of her application, is that covered by the motion?
That's our intent, is to cover all requested waivers, yes. So with that, all in favor?
So just what you said,
Yes.
so we're going to add the waivers to the package and also the conditions that Kevin has
Yes,
put in his memo?
exactly, yeah,
Okay, then.
yeah,
So you're approving all the waivers that she's asking for?
yes.
With the conditions.
Subject to the conditions that Kevin has
With the
outlined.
conditions.
There was also something about signage too, and has this gone to,
They already have an application in for a sign.
That's separate, right? Yeah.
no, but then it said it had to be approved by the planning board.
No, they changed that.
Now that can just be design review, right? So we're very fortunate we don't have to do that anymore. So she's waiting for our vote. Can we say all in favor?
Did you want to add the 2 waivers to Michael's?
So, yeah, you just have to state that you're
You want to start
approving the
again, Michael?
application
With the 2
The application subject to the conditions and with the waivers. That's the motion. Yes.
And approving all waivers were approved.
Exactly. That's our motion.
What she said.
You can do worse than do what
Can I just
Christina
ask one
tells you to do.
clarification?
Yes.
When you say subject, what does that mean?
Kevin had outlined certain conditions. Do you want to?
Well, it's just the hours on Sunday.
So it's outlining the planning board gets to determine the hours. Is that?
It says in here, under the conditions, that it's 8 to 6, Monday to Friday. We make the determination for Saturday and Sunday.
Yes, because she's requesting 8 to 1.
9 to 1, but
Yeah, 8 to 1 and 9 to 1 are a big difference, so I think you have to.
9 to 1 was what I had requested for weekends.
Right, so it's as the applicant has
You were
requested.
saying that he thinks a little bit later because it's a Sunday morning, but as for you guys.
That doesn't bother me. Yeah,
So then 9 to 1.
9 to 1. Yeah. Okay, now can we say all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, good luck.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Okay, so we'll look forward to seeing whoever would like to attend at our December meeting, and with that, I think we'll be adjourned.